So I had to like carry this kind of shame belief in this fundamental belief in my unworthiness that um, uh, uh, that was actually keeping me alive at the time. And now it doesn't work for me so much. The show ended somewhat abruptly, and it didn't. We had to like end the interview because we ran out of time. Essentially, it seemed obvious to me that, uh, of course, because I lived it, that there was a kind of happy ending there because we were sitting there telling the story. So obviously, we survived it. But how did we survive it? How did I get through all of that situation? Where we left off was I was wandering around on the streets, talking to the air, hearing the voices, talking to them. I was one of those guys. And honestly, I don't remember that so clearly. Um, and what I do remember, though, is going up to the mental hospital again and coming out of it. And then I ended up in the mental health system. And I think I talked about that in this series already. I stopped using drugs and I got healthy, as healthy as I could. I got put on antipsychotics. Got that diagnosis of schizophrenia and PTSD and, generalized anxiety disorder. So I was living in basically a halfway house, and then I got out of that. I was still in the system, but I was in a satellite house. I was living in a one bedroom, like a studio apartment, and I hated that. Did a lot of crying there, which was good for me. I needed that. Um, and then I went and moved in with a good friend of mine, and that's shortly after that I had relapsed. And I'm not sure if he knew that or not. I'd have to ask him. We're still in touch, which is awesome. Thankfully, didn't ruin that relationship. But what ended up happening out of nowhere is a friend of mine, her and her other friend, our close mutual friend of ours that I grew up with, had called me out of the blue. I don't think I had talked to them in years, and they told me they had someone that they wanted me to meet. Her name was Sarah, and that would it be okay if they brought her over to meet me? And I was like, sure, absolutely. Um, and so they did, and me and Sarah hit it off immediately. Uh, and come to find out later, like they both realized, our two mutual friends that introduced us both realized that what was going on with me, and were immediately like, you shouldn't hang out with him. He's tweaking hard, and this isn't going to be good for you. And she didn't listen. She kept coming over to visit me. And what was, to me, like looking back on it now, crazy about that situation was she would be there when I thought I saw my dead grandfather walking around. She would just be there and like, not like try to like tell me, no, 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 that's not happening or any of that. She just hugged me. And she would come over and she would like just kind of take care of me. I don't know how that happened. Um, and then when I got put into the mental hospital for the last time, she came up and visited me. And I think we fell in love pretty quickly. And uh, I remember kind of having a moment of clarity. Before I went to the mental hospital, I had this moment of clarity where it was like, okay, well, I can go and keep doing what I'm doing now and go die. Or I can hang out with this hot chick who loves me and I love. And so once I got in the mental hospital, she came and visited me there a few times. And they, when it came time to talk about my release, they didn't want to release me out onto the streets again. They wanted to wait until I had a safe place to go. And she offered to let me live with her. And her roommate, one of the people that introduced us, was, of course, I wonder if I ever thanked her for letting me move in with them. Maybe I should. Anyways, maybe this is the thank you. um, yeah, they let me move in with them, and shoot, almost 30 years later, Sarah's my wife. We've been married for 28 years now. Our son, maybe 27 years. Our son's 25. Um, so essentially, how I got out of that situation was ultimately what I consider divine intervention. Just serendipitously, someone introduced me to the right person at the right time who was willing to meet me where I was in the gutter and gently not yank me out of there, but stay there with me and gently guide me out of it. Pretty amazing and miraculous to me, if you ask me. And now I have a beautiful wife and an awesome son. And my dad liked to say this, and he said it a lot, like, God sent you an angel and allowed you to marry her. And I agree. One of the things that kept me resilient through the dark years when I was being abused, my sister and I were being abused, was having my grandmother there and my great aunt. They both really loved me unconditionally, and that is one of the things that allowed me to hang on, even though I still had to go through that darkness after darkness. The other things that I had that I still have today is my art and my music. It's part of why I'm so grateful for being a tattoo artist now, is because that art that I had allowed me to have some sense of control, some sense of expressing myself in an authentic way. I didn't have to show anyone, but I did. I'd show, man. And even at school, when I'd be drawing at school, people would be like, "Hey, draw this," and I'd draw it, and they'd be like, "Whoa!" So there was this kind of this like entertainment factor that I had already when I was a little kid before I even started playing music. So really a good thing that I had. Even in the mental hospital, the first time I went up there, they had a guitar and they let me play it, supervised, of course, so I got to play it. And then whenever I went back the second time, they're like, "Yeah, we still have that guitar. Do you want to play it?" And I was like, yes, please. So it was there. Music was there for me too. Having that ability to express myself it's always been something that I think really, even if no one was hearing it, like this podcast too. We're not getting very many views. We're not getting many, all of that stuff. I'm not here for that. I'm more here for the one person that, maybe helped, I'm also here doing this as a process of my own healing, so I can express what happened to me, how I resolved it, how I'm working on myself now. That to me is the message, not so much. That's why we call it showing the scars, not the wounds. No one really saw the wounds, but the scars. So this is how all of this shit, this is how I got wounded, and this is how I healed. That's what scars are. That's healing. When I first learned that the abuse stopped, and I first learned that what was going on, and putting a name to it, and then in denial of it and all of that, that really, that was a mind blowing, like life changing experience. The paradigm just shifted, and I didn't like it at all. Really, my first experience with that. Paradigm shift. So one of the things that I did, because I obviously felt really bad, I felt shame. Shame was something that I still kind of carry with me a little bit too. And it was one of those things that developed out of the abuse that I went through, that I actually, looking back on it now, I needed to feel shame, like there was something wrong with me in order to survive. Because if I didn't feel that way, then what would happen is then I would start to exert my will, and then that would be dangerous. My father would retaliate. If I defended myself at school, there would be retaliation. So I had to carry this kind of shame belief in this fundamental belief in my unworthiness, that that was actually keeping me alive at the time. And now it doesn't work for me so much. I'm working on that right now. But one of the things that whenever I started using methamphetamines at the age of 14, what that did for me, there was a couple things that it did for me. It was medicine, really. So it allowed me to connect with other people who were using the same thing as me, you know. And also the effects of the drug itself made me feel like a king. Where was the shame? There was no shame. I didn't even know. I felt so good. It was like, oh man, I was on top of the world. Everything was great. I could think clearly. I could be more creative for longer, and I could draw forever. I could do my algebra homework. I could do your algebra homework. I could, do my history. All of this. I could pick up that guitar and play for hours. And so that felt at the time I wasn't thinking about it like that. I was just having like feeling good, obviously. But that's the thing about shame is it, and you get used to not feeling good, and then something artificial comes in, and you're like, oh. And so I got addicted to that drug pretty quickly. And the more I used it, the worse I got, and the shame came back, in fact, tenfold. And then that started to manifest into psychosis, schizophrenia. So too much of any medicine is poison. And that was true for me. And so what I ended up doing was going from one traumatic situation, taking some medicine for it, and then from that, turning it into another traumatic situation. That's a hard pill to swallow, pardon the pun. But that's what happens. That's part of, at least for me, why I got into drugs. And I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but what else was I going to do? What would happen if I just let that shame consume me? You can wonder that for the rest of my life. And I didn't realize, how hurting myself was hurting everyone around me that loved me. So now when my kid was born, what a day that was. Hi, this is James. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube right now, do me a huge favor and give it a like and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, you could rate it, you could review it, you could share it with a friend as well. That would help me out a lot. Either way, thank you very much. When my wife was pregnant, I got off of SSI because I was on SSI for my schizophrenia that I had been diagnosed with. And when I went to whenever she got pregnant, I realized that, like, hey man, I want to work. I want to be an example. I need to be an example. I need to do better than my father did. I had a great example of what not to do. And that was my only compass as far as being a dad. It was like, here's what not to do. So when my wife got pregnant, I went to the Social Security office, told them I didn't want to, have their free money anymore. And they were like, yeah, why don't you see our psychiatrist, and then we'll see if you're actually disabled or not first. And so, because I don't know how often the Social Security Administration gets people coming in saying, I don't want your money. But anyway, so I went and saw the psychiatrist, and he asked me some questions, similar kind of questions that I got asked when I was in the mental hospital, and they were trying to see if I was releasable or not. But one of them was like, who's the president of the United States? The other one that I remember was, you see an addressed and stamped envelope on the ground, and there's no postmark on it. What do you do with it? So, find the nearest mailbox and put it in there. Like, I don't know. The president at the time was Bill Clinton. And so I don't know what answers I gave them when I was in a mental hospital. Like, who's the president? I am. I don't know. In any case, I got a clean bill of health from that experience, seeing a psychiatrist, and I did get off of SSI, and I haven't been on it since. And I ended up stopping taking my antipsychotic medication, and for a little while there, the voices did get a little louder, but then over time, they just went away. I haven't done methamphetamine since then, too. It's been 30-something years now. Yeah, and one of the interesting things about when the voices and everything went away was how depressed I got. I wasn't prepared for that. No one prepared. How could anyone prepare me for the fact that once all of that goes away, I felt pretty alone and isolated again. Like there was only my own thoughts, and there was no that sense of like connection and everything. So, anyways, my school counselor was completely correct about the cycle of abuse, because the thing about it, like when I got off of the SSI and I got a job and everything, and then he was born, and as he grew up, I had my whole journey, the struggles that I went through raising him were all internal because my impulses were incorrect, and I knew that. My, like, when your kid's crying and he won't stop crying, the impulse to slap him is very real for me, and that sucks. Like, that is not correct, and I knew that. And luckily, I had my wife there who was really. I'd always default to her, like, "Hey, what should we do? What should I do?" She'd be like, "I got it," you know. And that didn't happen all the time, and I gotta, like, give myself some credit. What I remember looking back on it, because of what my mind has been trained to be hyper focused on throughout my healing journey, is to avoid, the violence and the negativity, and to not pass that down. That's my whole reason for doing this, my whole reason for, being a father and everything too. But man, she was completely correct, because some of the impulses that came to me during my raising of my son, I just knew wasn't correct, and I had to learn to control that. And now that he's a grown man and he tells me that I did a good job, so I'm going with that. um, but all of that is to say too that, like, this whole experience and that whole experience of like schizophrenia and everything that I went through during those days, like, really influenced my belief system in ways that I still don't even like understand. Like, cuz I've always been kind of on this journey of trying to figure out what happened to me. Like, there's always this question of, why did this happen to me? Why did I have to go through that? Why did I go insane? Why what is going on around here, right? The influence it has on me, though, is that it really helped me get out of the dogmatic kind of Christian belief system, because that was alongside of the abuse too. The whole spare the rod, spoil the child idea is, an Old Testament idea, and but it hasn't taken me far away from my connection to everything, to the universe, if you will. In fact, like, going through that depression phase after the voices left me, and feeling disconnected, kind of made me seek that out again, but through, like, without the use of drugs. Although I still went through years of alcoholism, so I still, and I, so yeah, I still sought out self-medicating through alcohol and pot and all of that stuff. And at this point today, I think I have like 2 years and 8 months sober, and clean off of all of that now. I never thought I'd stop smoking pot. I knew I'd stop drinking, because that medicine ended up being poison for me too. Um, I never thought I'd stop smoking pot, but I ended up just saying I was going to take a break right when my dad was dying, because I wanted to meet his death sober as I've been since I was 12 years old. And I'm, been 2 years and some odd months. I'm still taking a break from it. So, but yeah, so that whole experience really turned me into a spiritual seeker, for lack of a better way to put it. And I understand that connection that I noticed when I was in that schizophrenic state, never really went away. It's just really obscured by my routines and my thinking, and the things that I have to do. I have to be a human being. I have to go take the trash out. I have to wash the dishes. I have to go to work. to do the things. I had to be a dad, still have to be a dad. He's 25 now, but still his father. That'll never go away. Still worry about him. Love that kid so much. Love my wife so much. My friends too. And then the one thing I think, speaking of spirituality, for me, the essence of spirituality is realizing that my story isn't who I am. I am not my story. My story doesn't define me. And by me telling it and putting it out here on YouTube and in the podcast space, gives me a little bit more perspective on it too, because I had to like edit it. And I literally had, when I took 2 days to edit it all down and stuff, and then I took another week to like separate the episodes and do all of that. I literally had a headache almost the whole time. It was a lot, emotionally a lot. But what I get from that now is to really just say, hey, here's my story. If you want to hear it, go to this YouTube channel and check out this podcast. I don't have to tell it now anymore if I don't want to. I don't mind telling it. I never have really mind telling it, but it's my story. It's not who I am. Like, and it really points me, and what I found out is that I'm always telling myself a story every day. I wake up in the morning, and the first thing that triggers in my brain is the story of what I have to do. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to go to work. I got to do this tattoo. I got to do the dishes. I got to take the dog out, go poop. And then I have to like pause for a second and realize that that's happening in my mind and take a deep breath and just say, all I have to do is put my clothes on right now. I don't even have to do that. I could lay here all day if I want. It's not sustainable, but nothing really is anyways. Everything changes. But it's a really important note to remember, and I think my biggest takeaway from all of this experience, not just going through it, but actually telling the story, is that it's now more than ever something that happened to me and not who I am. Thank you guys for watching.